Warning. The story you are about to read and or listen to has a series of potentially triggering and controversial topics, as well as events taking place. I will list them now. Child abuse, substance abuse, implied sexual abuse, bullying, self-harm, suicidal thoughts and tendencies, and potentially more as the story progresses. If you may feel uncomfortable by these things, no one will judge you if you click off of this video. If you accept the risk and want to experience the story for what it is, then I invite you to enjoy this chapter of whitemailing. Thank you. Final disclaimer. I do not make light of these topics, nor do I find them to be tools for shock value. I do consider them very real events that happen daily. Therefore, they should not be barred from being in a story to give it a more real feeling. I do not hope to make light of these things, only to draw attention to them. Please enjoy the show. Chapter 4. June prodded her teeth with her finger as she walked to school. She hated being late, even if, on that day, she couldn't help it. She had a dentist appointment earlier in the day, so she only headed there around noon, just as lunch was about to begin. She felt bad only arriving just in time to get food, but she couldn't exactly choose when she wanted to arrive at school. Her teeth irritated her. She tried everything, braces, retainers, the entire works to try to get rid of her snaggletooth. It made her so self-conscious that having a tiny tooth sticking out over her lips weren't particularly full or luscious like Noelle's. They were rather thin and unkissable. June was considered cute, but in an awe sort of way rather than a wow sort of way. She was jealous of Noelle. Noelle was taller and always had her makeup perfect. Her long brunette hair was always silky and perfectly in place. June couldn't grow her hair out of fear of it becoming a curly mess, also because Kyler is a jerk. "June?" a voice called out to her. She turned to her right. It was Ben. What was he doing out of school? "I figured that was you. I thought you'd stay home today. Thought you might be all numbed up." June blew a raspberry. "I'm only a little numb. I'm totally fine. What about you? Why are you out of school?" "I forgot my lunch, and since I live right around the corner, I just slipped away to grab it." Ben walked next to June, approaching the school. "So," Ben began, face forward, "how's the Kyler project going?" June shrugged. "I don't know. He won't even call me June. He keeps being so formal around me sometimes. I made him chuckle a few days ago, but that was because I had my mouth flooded with food. I don't feel like I'm getting any progress." Ben groaned to try and find the words. "Kyler is definitely not your average guy. It's harder to get through to him than others. He seems to go out of his way to specifically avoid that. He likes that sort of mysterious, cold demeanor. It's a shield. It keeps people away from him." June shook her head, looking at him. "But why?" she asked. "Why would he go that far? Doesn't he want people around him?" "You can ask him that, but he'll tell you no every single time. But I think deep down he does appreciate the company, but he's been kicked around so many times by many people. I think a part of him is just tired of being hurt. He'd probably rather avoid people, thus avoiding any chance of getting hurt." "I wouldn't do that to him, Ben." "And I'm sure you wouldn't be the first to tell him those words either." June thought about his words. She couldn't help but wonder how many people crossed Kyler, despite them earning his trust. It was probably so hard to accept people after all that time. She wondered if he thought that she'd do the same. She assured herself that she had no intentions of doing so, but what happens when he finally runs out of days? She would leave him, of course. She figured that's what he wanted, but there was a remnant inside of her that sang a different song. What if she'd do the same thing as the rest of them? Ben took a deep breath. "But I promise you this. Kyler, despite his cool guy exterior, is a really good guy. If you get his trust, his loyalty, there's no one that can take it from you. And despite popular belief, he's very mature." June nodded, turning left into the schoolyard to see a large group of people in a circle. There was a lot of shouting and rowdy cheering. There was obviously something going on over there. She walked to the circle, but attempted to go around it, as it was none of her business. She started to hear the people in the circle talking. "Oh man, he's dead! Kick his ass! My money's on Queen!" June stopped walking and simply exhaled a long, drawn-out sigh. "Mature. Right." She turned to the group and tried to cut through. "Excuse me. Coming through. Move, please." When everyone saw who was trying to maneuver through, they let her pass without a fuss. When she got to the center, she wanted to scream in frustration. Kyler was there, his uniform messed up like it was before last Friday. Jewelry and sweatband back, his sleeves were rolled up to the elbows, his white button-up had no tie, his black cardigan was rolled up as well. He didn't wear the black slacks, instead he wore khaki skinnies, with gray high tops instead of his brown loafers. Kyler was ducking and weaving the other boy's punches. He didn't seem to be having much trouble. The boy tried to throw a strong right hook, but Kyler dodged it and kicked his feet from out under him, tripping him and sending him into a roll. The crowd laughed, and Kyler turned to face him, still stone-faced as ever. The boy rose to his feet and charged at Kyler. Kyler lowered into a stance, ready to counter. "Kyler!" June screamed. Kyler jumped, turning to his right. Suddenly, Kyler's face felt a massive force. He fell to the ground onto his back. He grunted in pain, and the crowd roared. Kyler looked around, bleeding from the mouth. June looked irritated. "What do you think you're doing? No fighting!" Kyler disregarded her, standing to his feet. "Go away! Stay out of it!" He turned to the boy. "Cheap shot, David, and you know it." "Your fault for looking away in the middle of a fight, dumbass." David charged him again, ready to hit him. He punched at Kyler, but Kyler easily blocked the attack. He threw David's arm away and readied his fist. He weaved inside, ready to throw a huge left uppercut. David was finished. "You throw a single punch, and you've got another week with me," June yelled. Kyler froze in his tracks, his fist inches away from David's face. David grinned, and Kyler's expression slumped. David shoved his knee into Kyler's stomach, causing him to cough violently. David then punched Kyler in the side of the face, sending him to the floor. Kyler's mouth was covered in blood. Kyler rose to his feet again, obviously ready for more. June groaned. She walked into the circle and grabbed Kyler's arm, pulling it. Kyler whipped around at her. "What are you doing? Get out of here, I said!" "Don't yell at me!" she yelled. "I'm pretty sure I said no fighting." "I'm aware you said no fighting." "Then why are you here?" "I'm not a good listener." The crowd started looking around, whispering and speaking in hushed tones. Ben and Noelle stood next to each other, covering their faces. "They're both idiots," they said to each other. David leapt in front of June and punched Kyler again, knocking him down. June gasped. "Hey!" she said, turning to him. "That was just dirty. Leave him alone." David shrugged, shaking his head. "What? This is a fight, lady. Stay out of it." "Never thought I'd agree with you," Kyler groaned, getting up again. June glanced around quickly, pursing her lips in frustration. Would you just stay down? Seriously!" Kyler inhaled sharply. "Told you to get out of the circle." "And I told you no fighting." David laughed. "Wait a minute," he said, smirking. "Don't tell me Kyler's gone soft. Seriously? Getting controlled by a skirt?" Kyler's look changed to scorn. That comment clearly ticked him. He started to walk forward, but June jumped in front of him. "Wait!" "What?" Kyler growled. "You're going to get hurt. Get out of here." "Look, just talk to him." Kyler looked up at the sky in exasperation. "What?" he whispered, looking down again. "Just talk to him," she repeated. "Explain you don't want to fight." "I can't do that. That will kill my reputation. Everyone in the school will laugh at me." "No, they won't. They'll respect you for being mature." Kyler facepalmed. "Get real, would you? They want me to beat people up, not turn into a pacifist." "Are you going to go right along with what everyone wants you to do?" "Yeah, you're right. Instead, I should listen to the whims of some little tiny blonde with a fetish for sticking her nose where it doesn't belong." "You're lucky I don't add days for that. Talk to him, or it'll be 2 weeks." "Are you kidding me? You're such a tyrant!" He walked past her and stood in front of David. David was ready, started balling his fist. "Wait," Kyler said, putting his arms up. David halted, confused. What the hell? Kyler gulped. Let's... He trailed off, looking behind him at June. June nodded and gave him a thumbs up dramatically. He looked back at David and sighed. Not fight. The crowd fell silent. Ben and Noel grew hot with secondhand embarrassment. Kyler's face showed severe discomfort. David just stared a hole through him, his face blank. David was the first to speak up. What? He yelled, laughing. Are you kidding me? You want to back down? Oh, man, you have really lost your touch. Some of the crowd chuckled. Some of it just whispered uncomfortably. Kyler Queen was attempting to back down from a fight? Was this a Twilight Zone? David bent down back into a fighting stance. I figured you'd be the same badass, but now you're just an absolute shame. David charged him again, pushing Kyler down. Kyler grunted and June gasped. David grinned, his fist raised, ready to punch him again, and Kyler braced for impact. Wait a second! June screamed. She jumped in front of the attack, and David stopped in front of her. That's enough! No more, or I'll call a teacher! David's face showed annoyance. Out of the way, bitch! David extended his arm across June's torso, grabbing her opposite shoulder and shoving her to the side. June yelped in surprise and fear, and she hit the dirt. She grunted softly in pain, her face sour. Kyler looked down at June, and his face spelled shock. His eyes slowly traced back up to David, and his face began showing unmitigated rage. He rose to his feet and sprinted full force at David, seeing red. Fucking vermin! He screamed. He jumped into the air and extended his thigh quickly, bending his knee. He rammed his right knee into the face of the shocked David as hard as he could, knocking him back several feet. Blood flew from his nose and hit the dirt like a corpse onto his back. Kyler landed awkwardly, desperately trying to get back to his feet with his hands. He didn't notice that all his rage, all sound, seemed to leave him. When it returned, all he heard was the hollering, cheering, and roaring of the other students. He looked around quickly and saw June on the floor. He walked over to her and offered a hand. June looked up in awe. She saw the whole thing. She saw Kyler lose his temper. She felt like she should be scared, but instead she felt safe. She grabbed his hand and he quickly pulled her up. Thanks, she muttered. Don't give me that, he said. I told you to stay out of it. Are you hurt? June blushed. Uh-huh. Don't act dumb! Did you hear me? I said are you hurt? June looked back at him blankly, obviously irritated. Huh? Can't you be nice for just 5 seconds? You attacked him in my defense and you helped me to my feet. You were on a roll. Way to trip at the finish line. Shut up! This wasn't your place. What's wrong with you? Me? What's wrong with you? I clearly said no hitting. No. You said no punching. That was clearly a knee. I am going to smack you. They stared daggers at each other, while the rest of the kids checked on David. What's going on here? A mature voice asked. It was a teacher, peering through the crowd. He cut through to see David on the floor. What happened? What's wrong with him? Is he okay? He walked up to David and knelt down. He's out cold! What happened? He looked back at Kyler, and his expression soured. Why am I not surprised? Picking on another student, Mr. Queen? Kyler's expression hardened. He didn't even reply. June shook her head. They were fighting, she explained. Kyler tried to resolve it peacefully, but David wouldn't have it. Yeah, likely story, the teacher replied. He looked down at their hands. His expression changed to sadness. I'm disappointed, Miss Reese. I always had high hopes for you. June looked down to see that her and Kyler were still holding hands. June felt hot in the neck. Wait! She said desperately. It's not like that. He knocked me down. Kyler just helped me up. Is that right? He said suspiciously. Because I think Kyler manipulated you into helping him bully this child. Kyler wouldn't do that, she pleaded. I wouldn't either. I love the kids at this school. I wouldn't. Enough! He interrupted. I expect this from Kyler, but not you. You'll both serve detention this evening while we decide what to do with you. Kyler's jaw dropped. She didn't do anything, he shouted. She tried to break it up, that's it. June turned to Kyler, surprised. He was defending her. She didn't know why, but it was nice to have him on her side at least. The teacher shook his head. Detention. he repeated. 2 hours, room 210. Both of you. I will hear no arguments. We're going to investigate what happened. If we find out any foul play, we'll discuss suspension for you, Miss Reese. He turned to Kyler, his expression showing hatred. An expulsion for you. The teacher walked away, leaving Kyler seething. June looked over at him. She couldn't believe what happened. She was still in awe, but then her expression turned sour. Wait, detention? I've never had detention in my life! Look what you got me into! Oh, don't even start, Kyler said with a moan. I asked you multiple times to stay out of it. Ben and Noelle approached them. Ben coughed. Well, I just have one question for you both, he started. What are we going to do about David? You knocked him for a real loop, Kyler. Kyler looked over at him and shrugged. It's the price you pay for fighting me. June rolled her eyes. Don't glorify yourself. Noelle puffed her cheeks. I got one question, too. She shined. Why are you two still holding hands? They looked down and noticed she was right. They both ripped their hands away, blushing. They stared angrily at each other. Humph! They both said, turning away and walking away from one another. I don't really know why you're in here, June, said an elderly woman running the detention hall, but I want to assume it's to keep an eye on Mr. Queen. June and Kyler were the only two students in the room. The sun was still up, so the room was bright, but the lights were off. June was sat at the front of the room, while Kyler was stationed in the back. June sighed. Yeah, I guess you could say that. I don't really deserve to be in here, to be honest. The woman nodded through pursed lips. I figured. Well, you're both in here for 2 hours. I have to go make some copies of some papers and then deliver them to inboxes. I'll be gone a while. I trust you will keep an eye on him for my absence. June nodded. I'll make sure he doesn't break anything. She smiled, then tapped June's desk in a trusting gesture. She left the room, closing the door behind her. June tapped her pencil on the desk, trying to fill the silence. She glanced back to see Kyler leaning back in his chair, his feet propped up on the desk. She frowned, facing forward. I really don't like it in here, she muttered. It feels so dirty. Kyler snorted. You get used to it. Yeah, well, I don't want to. I've never had detention in my life. 2 hours? Seriously? First offense should be 5 minutes. Well, you were an accessory to a hellacious and brutal beatdown and bullying of a student, Kyler remarked sarcastically. Don't try to lightly pin the blame elsewhere, she groaned. You were fighting. That's got to be like rule number 1 of our arrangement. No fighting. I didn't start the fight, Kyler protested. He looked down. This sort of thing happens all the time. When you beat a lot of people up, people see you as a good fighter. When you're a good fighter, people want to challenge you to see if they can beat you. I'm a carnival game, a public activity. I might as well be wearing a step right up sign right around my neck. You see? She turned. That's why no one wants to approach you. You fight so damn much. It's the only thing people know you for. Kyler looked back up, his gaze hard. I didn't ask to be an attraction like that. People have gotten in my face and I pushed them out of it. I've done that enough times to get a reputation, but I never start fights. Sure, yeah, okay, I like fighting. It's fun to get the stress out of me, but I don't like hurting people. It sucks. But that's the only way I know how to get them to back down. That's why I started this whole thing, to get you to lose that reputation. I want you to stop fighting. Start denying people fights. If people see you as a wuss, fine, but at least people will start to see you as a mature person who they can at least try to talk to. The way things stand now, you're the scariest guy in the school. I'm trying really hard to help you break that. Kyler threw back his head, exhausted. I guess it never occurred to you that I don't want people around. June blinked. What do you mean? Everyone needs friends? Yeah, I used to think the same. Then, when I noticed my back looked like a pincushion from the amount of times it's been stabbed, I grew a tad sour to the idea of trusting another person. You don't trust me? June challenged. Kyler shrugged. I don't know what you want me to say to that. Do you expect a straight answer? Because I promise I don't have one. June sighed. And look at your uniform. I told you, wear the school uniform. It's a rule. Stop fighting. It's a rule. Stop yelling at people. It's a rule. It doesn't feel like you're learning anything. Maybe you're the one not learning anything. June tensed in her chair. What are you talking about? This isn't about me. Kyler chuckled, then dragged his hands down his face. He sat up, facing forward. You have made this about you every chance you've gotten. Are you sure you actually care about me? Or do you care about looking good for all your peers after you fix me, so you can run around saying, hey everyone, look what I did? I won't be wearing school uniform. I won't change my personality, because then I'll just be a fake. I wouldn't ever want friends that I can't be honest with. If I show up looking like someone I don't want to be, talking like someone I don't want to be, and acting like someone I don't want to be, then I'm only going to attract people I don't want around. I'm not fake, nor will I ever pretend to be. I'm going to be me. I'm going to be a hard ass. I'm going to be rough around the edges, but I promise, for your sake, I'll stop pushing away every human being that moves away from me, just so you can get a little satisfaction. Happy? June was left agog. She'd never been set so straight before. She figured she was just doing them this favor, but he was right. She had been quite selfish about all this. She was trying to change Kyler, not help him. She shifted uncomfortably in her chair before rising to her feet. She gathered her belongings, walked to the back of the room. She sat in the seat next to Kyler and sighed. You're right. Kyler turned to her, his arms crossed. What was that? Did you just say I was right? Yes. Kyler fake gasped. Call the press! Juniper Reese admits she's wrong. Oh, shut up. Seriously. I've been going about this all wrong. Kyler leaned back again. Yeah, you have. June lowered her head sadly. I just thought if I molded you into the perfect image of what a person should be, you'd be happy. But you're right. That wouldn't be you. You'd be a fake. You wouldn't be happy, even if surrounded by everyone. June covered her face in her hands. God, I feel like an idiot. Kyler glanced over at her and puffed his cheeks. He exhaled and leaned forward. Listen, he started. I get what you're trying to do. You're trying to give me some relief to my life. I get that. But let me find it on my own, okay? I think that's fair. June looked up. I can't just leave you alone. I can't just end the contract. I know that, Kyler said, flipping his pencil casually. But just ease up on the rules. No fighting? Okay, I can be on board with that. I'll do my best. But school uniform? Be nice and smiley to people? I think that's overkill. June nodded, looking down. Okay, that's fair. But I'm still following you around everywhere. Kyler face-dessed. So close. June looked at him, her face still saddened. Thank you, by the way. Kyler didn't raise his head, but turned it to her direction. For what? You defended me earlier. Twice. David pushed me down and you went crazy. I appreciate you coming to my aid like that. Plus, you stood up for me to Mr. Jenkins. Seriously, that made me happy. Kyler looked away, probably to hide his blush. I didn't do it for you. I figured if you didn't have detention, I'd get 2 hours away from you. June rolled her eyes. Yeah, right, she thought. As for David, that was messed up. You weren't in the fight. Would have done that for anyone. No, you wouldn't have, she thought. She knew Kyler had good in him. He could try to hide it all he wanted, but there was no chance. Now then, she spoke clearly, I want you to walk to my house every morning before school. His head shot up, a worried look on his face. Why would I ever do that? It'll be much easier to keep an eye on you if I'm next to you. That way you can't start any fights before I get there. So every morning, walk to my house so I can walk with you to school. No exceptions. Kyler picked up his bag. Yeah, there's got to be something in here to kill myself with. June reached over and grabbed his bag, trying to rip it from him. That's not funny! Kyler ripped his bag violently, causing June to fall out of her seat. She fell face first into his right arm. She grabbed it for balance, trying to scramble to her feet. Kyler shook harshly. Let go! June lost her balance again, this time throwing her arms around his shoulders to try to get up. Then she looked to see Kyler staring at her uncomfortably. She looked at him annoyed. "Jerk." "Excuse me," a voice called from the front of the room. "June, what are you doing?" June looked over to see the detention hall teacher back, fixing her papers. June released Kyler, grabbing her bag. She walked back to the front of the room. "Sorry, nothing," she said, her face red. Kyler grinned behind her. "She couldn't keep her hands off me since the moment you left, Mrs. B." June slowly turned her head around if she was a movie monster. "Yes," she agreed. "I'd take any opportunity to wring your neck." June heard a knock at her door and her eyes creeped open. She'd still been asleep that morning, her head lazily lifted to her bedroom door. When she saw it, her head gave way to the natural gravity and fell back on her pillow. She took a deep sigh and rolled out of bed. Why was her mom waking her up this early? She hadn't done that in years. She looked at her alarm clock, which still showed a good 15 minutes before she woke up. Another knock at the door, and June groaned. I'm coming, she reassured. She twisted the knob and opened the door. "What is it?" she asked with a yawn. "Oh," a voice said that clearly didn't belong to her mom. "Good thing you don't sleep naked." She looked up to see Kyler outside her bedroom, fully dressed. June stared at him for a while, then looked down to see that she was in her underwear. She squealed and slammed the door. "Oh, God!" she yelled. "Please tell me you didn't see anything." "Sure did," he reassured casually. "Get dressed, would you? I showed up as requested. Let's go already." "You're so freaking early. I don't wake up for another 15 minutes. "What are you talking about? Didn't the storm knock out your power last night?" June blinked behind the doorway. Storm? What was he talking about? She went and grabbed her phone. It was 30 minutes after she was supposed to wake up. "Oh, no! Just wait out there. I'll be right in a sec." "Sure," he said. "Kinda gotta wait out here." June quickly threw on her uniform, washed her face, and ultimately decided even if her hair was a mess, she didn't have time to fix it or put on any makeup. She scrambled for her contacts but couldn't find them. So she sighed in deep frustration and put on her glasses. She opened up the door to see Kyler on the couch. "You ready?" she called, picking her bag up. Kyler looked back and jumped. "I didn't know you wore glasses." "I don't. I use contacts, but I don't have time. Do I look okay?" Kyler smirked, turning away. "I don't know," he remarked slyly. "I think what you were wearing before was fine." June rolled her eyes. "Pervert! Let's go." June and Kyler walked next to each other on the way to school. Most of it was in silence. June still felt bad about the day before. She vowed to stop being so pushy, but refused to back down in her goal to make Kyler a happier person. "But what if someone hits me first?" Kyler inquired suddenly. June shook her head. "You walk away and tell a teacher." "Good idea," he said sarcastically. "Maybe they'll give me an extra juice box for being a good noodle." June shrugged. "You tell me, do you think people would be very attracted to a guy that's always punching people in the face?" "That doesn't seem to stop you." "I'm not afraid of you either," Kyler groaned. "You know, I could hurt you if I wanted to. Really hurt you." "Oh, I know. But I think on the inside, you're just a little fluffy puppy wanting to love everyone." June turned to him and started baby-talking and petting his hair. "Isn't that white, Kyler? Oh, good boy." Kyler looked down at her with an expression full of vendetta. June removed her hand, grinning. "Easy, Fido." June and Kyler walked into the front doors of the main building and started walking through the halls, but something was off. People were looking at Kyler and whispering to each other and smiling. Kyler didn't seem to notice, but June was definitely aware. The girl approached the both of them. "Hi, June," she said brightly. She turned to Kyler, her smile still there. "Hi, Kyler." She looked at June once again. "I was wondering if I could still do that interview, June. Any time is cool." June nodded. "Sure, after school's fine." "Great. If it's not too much trouble, could you bring Kyler with you?" Kyler blinked and looked at June. June nodded. "I'll make sure he's there." Kyler whined. The girl clapped briefly and walked off. Kyler watched her leave with furrowed brows. "What was that about? Didn't she look at me like I was Jason Voorhees on Friday?" June shrugged with puffed cheeks. "I don't know. Maybe she thinks you're cute." Ew. I know. Who would think that? Kyler swung his pack around and whacked June in the behind, causing her to yelp. They continued walking, but people seemed to openly acknowledge Kyler. They would wave and even say hi. Kyler was even starting to become aware and very worried. Juniper, what's happening? Maybe they admire you, she suggested. Think about it. You tried to resolve things peacefully, but as soon as I got hurt, you totally took him down. Kinda admirable. I just saw my opportunity and I took it. Is that why you screamed like you stole the last chip in the bag? Kyler didn't respond. He was too busy looking sour from being stumped. They entered the classroom together, and everyone looked stiff. People still weren't used to June being friends with Kyler. She was far too likable of a person to be hanging out with a degenerate like him. Kyler sat in his seat and sighed heavily. June walked back to her desk and sat down as well. Noelle walked next to her and bent down. Detention, huh? June threw her head back. Yeah, she moaned, and I still didn't deserve it. She glanced at Kyler quickly. But at least it wasn't for nothing. Noelle laid her head on June's shoulder. Poor baby, she said condescendingly as she wrapped her arms around June's shoulders. June fake cried humorously. Miss Higgins walked in the room with a towel over her shoulder. Everyone take your seats, please. Noelle walked back to her seat, and everyone faced forward. Miss Higgins took the towel off and laid it over her desk. We're nearing the end of August, she announced. That means the pools will be closing soon. We had a meeting over the summer discussing that the students at this academy are unhappy that we overwork them. They demand less homework, and while this is completely out of our power, we've decided that allowing you leisure activities will help break the tension and hopefully relieve some of the stress. Therefore, in a week's time, we'll start going to the pool in order of grade. Since we're ninth, we'll be going 2 weeks from Friday. The students started to cheer, but Miss Higgins held up her hand to keep order. We're only going once this year, and we'll be there for about 2 hours. That being said, if you have a swimsuit, dust it off. If not, well, I suggest you go shopping for one. The kids all cheered, and Miss Higgins smiled. Okay, guys, let's start with the lesson plan. Kyler shook his head and looked over at June to make fun of the situation, but saw that her expression was grim. It wasn't fear, but something about her looked extremely sad and uncomfortable. His gaze hardened. He poked her in the side with a pencil. She jumped and looked at him. Ow! She yelped. You couldn't do that with the eraser side? Welcome back to reality. What's the problem? You seem like you're completely against this. Your anti-fun alarm going off? June stared at him for a while before looking down. Can you do me a favor? Kyler shifted in his seat. Like what? I just need a new swimsuit, I guess. Can you go with me? Kyler blushed. You want me to look at you in swimsuits? He whispered. June looked up sadly. I know it's a weird request, but I'll promise to knock off some days off your time if you go. I don't want to go alone. Kyler refused to miss a chance at that, so he nodded. Okay, he said hesitantly, but promise me we aren't going on a weekend. June grimaced, looking away. By the way, I wanted to go Saturday. Kyler face-asked.